Greatest military commanders of the Middle Ages. There are many military commanders in history that have never lost a battle, but not many of them never lost a battle, had one eye, Bohemian blood in their veins, a glorious mustache, and were almost erased from history by the Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Emperor due to their badassery. Not much is known about his early life, but it is believed that Jan was born around 1360 to a lesser noble family near the modern-day Czech city of Borovany, and had some financial problems connected to his family's estate, emerging in various state records from time to time. It is also believed that around 1380 he became a mercenary and reappeared in official records in the early 15th century as an accused bandit. He rolled with an outlaw group led by a man called Matthew, nicknamed the Leader, who similarly to Jan had some serious beef with Henry III of Rosenborg and his family. Basically, at the time, the Rosenborgs, alongside other prominent noble families, raised against the Bohemian king Wenceslaus IV, which led to many military clashes. Bohemia was wilding back then. Anyways, after a few years of banditry and execution of Matthew, Jan got lucky and joined a mercenary group working for Wenceslaus that was focused on eradicating bandits, which earned him a pardon in 1409. In 1410, he took part in the Battle of Grunwald, serving as a mercenary in the Polish-Lithuanian army, fighting against the Teutonic Order. Some historians say this is where he lost his eye and developed a taste for military strategy. For almost a decade after the battle, he stayed in Prague and landed a job as the chamberlain to Sophia of Bavaria, wife of King Wenceslaus, and later became the courtier of the king himself. It is at this time that he became the stern follower of Jan Hus, a Bohemian theologian and reformator. He later moved to a Hussite town of Tabor and became a military leader serving the movement. In 1420, Sigismund of Hungary, with the aid of Pope Martin V, proclaimed a crusade against the raising Hussites, whom they believed to be heretics, and Bohemia started wilding again. With Jan becoming a general on the side of the Hussites, a massive humbling of European knights began. You see, a vast majority of the Hussite forces were hastily trained common folk. Jan knew that he wouldn't have a chance in a traditional battle against heavy-armored European knights, so he used his most iconic tactic. He heavily utilized armored wagons arranged in an enclosed formation, joined together with chains and reinforced with heavy shields which resembled a mobile fort. Each wagon would have a peasant crew of around 20 men, armed with crossbows, flails, pikes, and early firearms, which proved to be extremely effective against heavily armored cavalry, which dominated European battlefields at the time. The use of war wagons and his stalwart leadership led to him repelling the Crusader forces under the command of Sigismund. In the year following the First Hussite Crusade, Jan lost his second eye while sieging a Christian fortress. Then, he proceeded to kick Sigismund's ass again when he attempted a second crusade and turned to more ass-kicking, this time directed at opposing Hussite factions, whom he humbled in his usual fashion and united the Hussites in 1424. The man died undefeated not long after due to an unknown illness. His dying wish was to have his skin used to make war drums so he can lead his troops even after death. After his demise, his enemies said that the one whom no mortal hand could destroy was extinguished by the finger of God. He established himself as a great military leader, capable and willing to fight for the common people, and to this day, Jan the One-Eyed is hailed as a Czech national hero. Skanderbeg, or George Castrioti, was an Albanian nobleman born in 1405 who became a national hero known for instigating a rebellion against the Ottoman Empire and leading Albanian people towards establishing a united nation. As a young boy, George was sent as a political hostage to the Ottoman court in Edirne alongside other young boys of noble birth, where he was converted to Islam and given the name Iskander after Alexander the Great. He was trained and educated by the Ottomans, with the intention being that he and the rest of the noble boys will become high-ranking officers in the Ottoman army. Even after spending numerous years amongst the Ottomans in Edirne, Skanderbeg never forgot his heritage, and in 1443, during the Battle of Nice, seized an opportunity to defect and return to Albania, where he pushed out several contingents of Ottoman troops, renounced Islam, embraced Christianity, and instigated a massive unification of the Albanian nobles, officially forming the League of Legja. Now a lord of Albania, Skanderbeg became a traitor in the eyes of the Ottomans. His military prowess was tested in 1444 at the Battle of Torviol, where he clashed against the Ottoman force of around 25,000 well-equipped men, with his 15,000 mostly peasant soldiers. Hiding about 3,000 of his troops in the nearby forest, he lured the enemy into attacking, and encircled the Ottomans, resulting in a massacre and a decisive victory. His victory was particularly impressive, due to it being one of the first pitched battles that the Ottomans lost on European soil, which earned Skanderbeg international respect in the eyes of Christian kings and princes. A year later, in 1445, another Ottoman army of 15,000 men was dispatched to deal with Skanderbeg, which he promptly defeated at Mokra Valley, with the clever use of terrain advantage trapping the enemy host. Another armies were sent to the region within the following year, and in 1446, Skanderbeg defeated the Turks, outnumbering his forces 3-1, yet again at the Battle of Otonia. However, his most famous battle would come in 1457, known as the Battle of Albulena, where Skanderbeg defeated an Ottoman army numbering around 100,000 with a host of 10,000 soldiers. He split his army into multiple groups and ordered them to move through the mountains to avoid detection. When the Ottomans were convinced that he had fled or was defeated elsewhere, he ordered the army to regroup and attacked the Turkish camp, killing and capturing around 30,000 men. At this point, Skanderbeg has waged a continuous defensive war against the Ottoman Turks for around 2 decades, having seriously lost only one battle during his reign as the Lord of Albania. He died of malaria at the age of 62, which marked the end of an era of Albanian resistance, as the Ottomans eventually reasserted control over the region. To this day, Gjergj Kastrioti is hailed as a national hero of Albania, with his historical coat of arms eventually becoming the nation's symbol. Timur, also known in the West as Tamerlane, was a strategic genius and an undefeated military commander of Mongol and Turkic descent that rose to power from the steppes of Central Asia to carve out one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. A lot of Timur's early life is still being disputed, but we know that he was born in 1336 in the city of Kesh, in what is now Uzbekistan, to a minor noble family. When he was a young man, he and some of his followers were living a bandit life, stealing and raiding travelers for goods, and at some point during this period of his life, he sustained injuries to his right hand and leg, which left him disfigured and limping, earning him the nickname Timur the Lame, which was later westernized to Tamerlane. Despite his injuries, Timur's ambition was undeterred. He used his cunning to gain control of the Barlas tribe from which he originated, and then, through a combination of alliances, force, and strategic rumors, he expanded his influence over much of Central Asia, despite his mixed heritage, preventing him from claiming the title of Great Khan or the Caliph. Timur understood the power of psychological warfare, and he used it to great effect. One of the most infamous instances of this was his conquest of the Persian city of Isfahan in 1387. The great city had initially surrendered and was treated with mercy by Tamerlane, but after his tax collectors and a contingent of soldiers were killed by the locals, he ordered a targeted purge of the city. It is said that anywhere between 100 and 200,000 were killed that day, and several towers of heads were constructed in and around the city as a warning to its remaining inhabitants and potential opponents. It is worth noting that in his actions, Timur was not led by blind fury, but strategy. He believed that a sufficient display of violence would deter enemies and opposition. At the same time, he would spare the artists and the educated, ensuring that his subjects can rebuild after one such massacre. Timur was the embodiment of duality. On the one hand, he was a brilliant strategist and a ruthless conqueror capable of severe atrocities. On the other, he was a patron of culture and a surprisingly merciful ruler to those who surrendered willingly. By 1404, his empire dominated the regions of Central Asia, parts of the Caucasus, parts of northern India, and western Ottoman territories. His brutal rise to power laid the groundwork for his empire to exist for the next 100 years, while his lineage produced great historical figures such as Babur of the Mughal Empire. In 1405, Timur fell ill on his way to conquer Ming China. He died undefeated, having won over 10 major battles in his lifetime, and countless smaller skirmishes, leaving a legacy of a meticulous war strategist and a brilliant military commander. King David IV of Georgia, known as David the Builder, is one of the most celebrated figures in Georgian history. Born in 1073 into a kingdom fractured and on the brink of collapse due to incursions from the Seljuk Turks, David ascended the throne of Georgia at the age of 16 and immediately took bold actions to secure his kingdom's future, reorganizing Georgian military and administrative systems. He introduced a system of land tenure, curbed the power of nobility, and invited artisans and scholars from abroad into the kingdom, which earned him his nickname. He modernized the military and organized it into smaller regional detachments focused on surprise attacks and guerrilla warfare, instead of pitched battles, which greatly improved their diminishing morale. With this, he repelled smaller Turkish tribes from southern Georgia, allowing native populations to return to their homes, revitalizing the economy. In the years prior, his father George II signed a treaty with the Seljuks that would require Georgia to pay them annual tribute. This would change when the Pope called for a crusade against the Turks. With the Seljuks being focused on fighting European powers, David stopped paying the tribute and began reconquering lands previously lost by his father. He was known for leading his men into war, boosting morale. Some of his most famous battles include the Battle of Trialeti, where it is said that David's personal host of 1,500 men fought and won against a Seljuk force of 100,000 by utilizing terrain and the exhaustion of Turkish troops to their advantage, eventually routing the Seljuks. Yet, his most famous victory, and at the same time, the victory that decided the fate of Georgia and began its golden age, would come in 1121 at the Battle of Digori. The battle would come after the Seljuk Sultan, Mahmud II, irritated by David's victories, called a jihad against the king and gathered an army of around 200,000 soldiers to subjugate Georgia once and for all. Hearing about the jihad, King David raised a host of his own numbering around 60,000. According to medieval Arab sources, David met his enemies when they moved through Georgia and sent out a small unit of troops to simulate negotiation. At the same time, he maneuvered his main army behind and around the Seljuks, using mountainous and forested terrain. When his fake negotiators met with the enemy commanders, they attacked them, killing most, if not all of them, effectively crippling the Seljuk army. At the same time, David, with a contingent of 1,000 crusaders and the bulk of his army, attacked the Turks from the rear, while the remainder of his host encircled the enemy, resulting in the Seljuks being overrun within 3 hours of the battle. Shortly after the Battle of Digori, David the Builder liberated the Caucasus and captured the occupied city of Tbilisi, which firmly established the Kingdom of Georgia as protectors of Christianity in the region. In little over 2 decades, David has brought Georgia up from her knees and recaptured all her lost territories. He fought in the front lines with his men to the very end, and after 34 years of his reign, died in January 1125, and to this day is regarded as one of, if not, the best king that Georgia has ever seen. Thank you for watching. If you would like to see more videos like this, please consider liking and subscribing, as it greatly helps this channel. See you again soon.